Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Way back in episode 11, we discussed the hot topic of crop circles. Where do they come from? What do they mean? Some of them, without a doubt, are definitely the work of humans engaged in an expensive form of vandalism. Others we just don't know. Join us on Aliens Explored as we ask the question, if crop circles are indeed the work of a few miscreants, how much of an effect has the pandemic lockdown had on this mysterious phenomenon?
Welcome back, listeners, to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we explore aliens and UFOs and unidentified aerial phenomenon and lots of otherworldly activities. I'm one of your...
He's speaking in tongues. It's miraculous. Praise the Lord.
I'll try that one again. I'm one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly.
And Neil, do you remember way back in the mists of time, back in episode 11, we talked about crop circles?
How could I forget?
Oh, one of my favourite subjects.
How could I forget when I blundered in, not realising what a hot button topic it was for you?
Well, it is my specialist subject. Not that I'm an expert or anything like it. There are people who know far more about them. I'm an enthusiastic amateur. That's how I see myself when it comes to crop circles. But I have been studying them for... oh gosh, must be coming up on 20 years now. Must be. Oh gosh, suddenly feeling very old. So we when we talked about them back in episode 11, the pandemic had really just started, and I put to you this idea that I thought it'd be interesting to see if crop circles are affected by the pandemic. So people not being able to go out, the lockdown and what have you, does that mean if they were all man-made, then we wouldn't get any because nobody would be allowed to go out, right? But also there's a flip side to it where if people aren't going out as much, then they wouldn't be as well spotted. So I kind of theorised at the time that there would be fewer crop circles at least identified.
Well, yeah, I mean they're going to be identified, aren't they? Because the farmer's going to come out and say, for fuck's sake, my crops have been flattened again. I mean, how much does a typical crop circle cost a farmer in lost crops?
Oh, a lot of money. But they don't always report them. I mean, it's not... I'm saying it costs a lot of money. So, when it comes to genuine crops, and I use this term genuine, I'm talking not evidently man-made. It actually doesn't damage the crops at all. It's people going and visiting them, usually without permission. Don't do that, listeners. Always get the farmer's permission before you enter a field. But they go in and they trample the crops and they break them. Because I'm going to keep using genuine crop circle as a shorthand, but I'm sure you know what I mean by that. When you go into a genuine crop circle, the crops are not broken. I mean, again, so go back and listen to episode 11, listeners, because I go into that in some detail. But walking in a crop circle does break them. When they're made with planks of wood and rope, yes, they are broken and the crops are damaged. But if a crop circle is left unvisited, as it were, the farmer can just they can just harvest it as normal, and it's fine. So it doesn't actually, the crop circle itself doesn't cost the farmer anything.
So it's going to be the ones that appear on insurance claims. They're the ones that are going to be. So it's more like the man-made ones that are going to become public because the farmers incurred some losses.
Yes,
which you want to mitigate.
Farmers are reticent to report them because they know they will get visited. They know they'll get people illegally trespassing and coming and walking in their crops and destroying them. So
surely,
if they report them, it's going to cost them money.
Surely, if you want to see a crop circle, the best way to see it up close is really to go somewhere nearby and send up a drone. Anyone can get a drone these days, can't they? For not much money. If you really want to see it.
Without very, very specialist licenses, the maximum height you can fly them to is 400 foot. I'm a qualified drone pilot.
Right.
This is you're in my, you've walked straight into my wheelhouse again.
Okay.
Neil.
Yeah, but I've got a drone that I got given as a present. I've never flown it because not allowed to. But I wouldn't have to go 400 feet. I would have thought we'd be plenty high enough to have a look at these. To look at your average crop circle.
It is if you know where it is in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, if I was there, I wouldn't have to actually walk into the crops. I could, from the lane on the side.
Oh, absolutely, and indeed, professional crop circle they're very careful about how they do it. I'm talking about more members of the public. Look, it's crop circle. Oh no, that's like, and they'll go stomping straight in and smash down half the crops on the way in. That's the thing.
I mean, at ground level, you can't really appreciate it, can you? How many pictures of crop circles have you seen that are taken from ground level?
Having been inside crop circles, so there are things that you do to investigate them that do require you being at ground level. For example, taking soil samples, taking crop samples, taking magnetic readings, things like that. But you can't do that with the drone.
I'm looking at quite an elaborate crop circle now. There's a field of some kind of cereal. There's this elaborate sort of wheel kind of. It's like a disc surrounded by little plectrum-shaped things all the way around. Very elaborate, and probably 100 yards or so away is field that isn't being used for growing crops. It's being used. It's just a meadow, so maybe sheep graze there, and it looks like there's a path the way. So, without actually going into the field, the nearest you can get will be about, I don't know, 50 or 60 metres away. I'm just guessing from this picture, but at ground level, would you even see it?
Well,
you're looking along the top of the crops.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, when you're accustomed to looking for them, you can usually see evidence. Not quite at ground level, but you don't have to have much of an elevation to spot them. And I'm going to hazard a guess. The way you've described that, was that the one that was in Bavaria?
No, it's spotted near Clay Hill, spelled Cley.
Right. Okay. It sounds very similar to one in Bavaria, but to actually go into the circuit, so you'll see that there are some tracks in the field. If you think those are the width of a tractor, so it gives you an idea of the scale.
But there are also some people sat in the crop circle. Almost looking like
you often get that because people will visit them, and sometimes farmers allow it. Sometimes they'll charge you to go in the field, and that's fine. That's fair enough. Like I said, it does cost them money when people do go tramping in the fields.
I mean, there is a track leading to it, a sort of irregular. I mean, the circle is neat. It's mathematically precise, and there's this sort of raggedy little trail leading to it. But it's, I mean, there are sort of trails across the wheat, but obviously made by some kind of vehicle. This path this wiggly little path leading to the circle. It's not just been made by people walking there. It's way too big. Some kind of vehicle has made that.
Yeah, that happens occasionally. I mean, each one has its own thing that, people do.
Yeah.
But But yeah, so coming back to the original, so I speculated that we will see fewer crop circles in 2020.
Oh.
How wrong I was. Now, reported crop circles, there were 38, with rumours of a further 12. So I dismiss the rumours because there's no evidence to support them. They've just said, "Oh yeah, I saw a crop circle. It was in this general area," and nobody can find it. So they're easy to dismiss. There were 6 in May, 9 in June, 16 in July, 4 in August, and 3 in September and October. So yeah, very much a normal amount of crop circles.
But that's the pattern you'd expect as the crops are growing, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Crop circles are very seasonal. June, July and August.
Yeah, because crops are seasonal.
The time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Apart from, there was this amazing crop circle on Breen Beach, drawn in the sand. So Breen's at Burnham-on-Sea, isn't it, down in Somerset? Quite amazing.
Yeah.
The sand circle at Breen Beach in Somerset. And it was drawn by one of the world's greatest sand artists, Julian Richardson, along with his talented team, Stuart Dyke, Merker and Paul Burton.
Okay, I mean, I'm utterly unaware of that one. The fact it's very obviously man-made would explain why. You do get sand circles as a genuine thing, as a non-man-made thing.
This is incredible. This is a real work of art. Yeah.
I will look that one up for sure. Now, the vast majority of the crop circles this year were in Wiltshire, as in fact they always are. But you also had crop circles. There was one in West Yorkshire, one in Derbyshire, one in West Sussex, one in Dorset, one in Gloucestershire, one in Oxfordshire, one in Somerset. Now those last few, Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire and Somerset, are very, very close to Wiltshire anyway. There were 3 in Hampshire, which is a little bit more unusual. But you compare that to 19 in Wiltshire. And yes, Wiltshire is a very, very rural county. There are a lot of fields around, but it's not the only rural county in the country. West Yorkshire is very rural in places. So, I mean, it has been speculated that, maybe it's just wherever there are fields. But no, there are places with just as many fields that just don't get them. It seems to be focused.
Well, it's going to be areas dedicated to cereal crops, isn't it? I mean, if you drive through Hampshire, you might think, oh, what lovely countryside. But you can't go for a walk in it because it's all just fields of crops with nothing in between them.
Well,
you can't. Whereas if you're in Sussex, there's the downs, there's lots of sort of hills and dales to wander over.
Well, yes, but what I'm saying is there are other areas that have just as many cereal crop fields that just don't get them. And bear in mind, this is globally. I'm talking. It's not just in the UK, because there were also crop circles. There was one in Brazil, one in Hungary, one in France, one in Russia, one in Bavaria that I mentioned, and 2 in Poland this year. Now this is reported.
Very much concentrated in England and specifically in Wiltshire. But I mean, Wiltshire is associated with all kinds of energies, isn't it? That Glastonbury's not far from there. Stonehenge isn't far from there. People always talk about
it's a very spiritual area. Ley
lines cross there. And also, all sorts of people go there for all sorts of
You've got
mystical
Avebury,
reasons.
Silbury Hill. You've got all the white horses around the area. Yes, it is a very, very spiritual
all
place.
All the pagans and white witches gather there.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking as a pagan, I can attest to that. So yeah, there's definitely something very strange going on.
Yeah, no.
In Wiltshire,
but specifically addressing the question that we ask, it says how would they be affected by the COVID pandemic? Well, I don't see why they would, because it's not exactly a social activity, is it, going out and making crops? It's something you can sort of sneak out and do on your own. I mean, yeah, there's been lots of all sorts of activities, but there hasn't been less farming, and there wouldn't have been less of people going out there and messing with crops, if that's what they were.
No, but during a lockdown, so to create a crop circle in a field without permission is a criminal offence. It's criminal damage.
Yeah.
It's trespassing. In a lockdown situation, people being out and about doing these things, they'd be far more obvious. It'd be far easy to spot someone. I mean, these are areas where you don't get that many people at the best of times anyway.
That's what I mean. So you'd be spotted at a normal time as just much.
Exactly. So you'd stand out. Really stand out if you tried to do it during a pandemic.
And during lockdown, people were allowed out to go for a walk. I think some sort of all sorts of rules that were broken by, well, no less than the Prime Minister on his bike, or his chief advisor driving from one end of the country to the other in his car. So I don't really see how the pandemic would have had much of an effect on sort of countryside foot traffic.
You're talking about being out for a walk, so the image that's generated by that is, I'm out for a walk. I know, here's a field, I'll just quickly whip up a crop circle. You are talking about intricately detailed, mathematically precise patterns that are hundreds of feet across.
Yeah.
Hundreds of feet. This is not something you do on a whim. It's not something you can do quickly or readily. And certainly, I mean, you remember an episode, where I talked about the difference between the man-made ones and the genuine ones.
Yeah. Well,
and certainly looking at the images of some of these 38 that have appeared last year, there's definitely some that are man-made. You can kind of call up an image. Okay, the edges are ragged. It's quite small, relatively speaking. It might be sort of 50 foot across, which makes it a very, very small one by comparison. The circle is not a perfect circle. It's slightly irregular, or it's pretty close to being a perfect circle, but it's on the side of a hill. Now, genuine crop circles, when hills are involved, it's only a perfect circle if you're looking directly down on it.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So as it comes down the hill, it sort of stretches out a little bit. So yeah, they're not so mathematically perfect like the others. So yeah, there are definitely some of those 38. I didn't count up how many, because you are talking about a handful, maybe half a dozen. But if I had to guess,
if they are made by extraterrestrials, no, the pandemic isn't going to affect that. But even if they're made by humans, we're still talking about people who are sneaking out, probably at night for the most part, to do something illegal. Well, I don't see how they're going to telling them, sorry, we're locked down because of the COVID, is going to stop them doing that if that's what they really want to do. And they're certainly not going to be. You certainly won't be able to accuse them of risky behaviour in terms of spreading a virus.
The people who claim to have made them have had this put to the test, where they said, right, okay, here's a field. Now, first of all, they can't do it in the dark. They're incapable because it is very simply too dark. The type of lighting they need to do it effectively at night time makes them very obvious for miles around. You're talking, flood lighting that's required in order to get the precision that we're talking about. Even then, they can't be that as precise as they claim to be. You know, nobody has ever been able to generate the level of precision in a crop circle that we actually see.
These things must take some time to do. If you're doing them in broad daylight, isn't the farmer likely to come along in the middle? I mean, how many half-completed crop circles are there where the farmers come along and they've run off while doing it?
Yeah, none. There was an advert for Weetabix many years ago, and they did a crop circle style thing. They did it with farmers' permission, obviously, and it was in a field where you very regularly get crop circles, almost every year without fail, just opposite Silbury Hill, in fact, literally over the road from it. And this alleged crop circle was basically the shape of a plug with 3 Weetabix shapes for the pins, because in the UK we have 3 pin plugs, and the word Weetabix in scripted text above it. And it was quite big. I mean, it took up most of the field, and the idea was this could be seen from the air and some distance away. It took them 3 days to create that crop circle. Well, it wasn't a circle, but you know, to flatten the crops and create this image. 3 days, solid days. Now that was obviously with the farmer's permission. When you think that compared to that, you get these like hundreds of feet across circles where you'll get a pilot flying over a field, fly back again 5 minutes later, and one's appeared. You know, I reject this "they're all man-made" thing. It's so vehemently. But
so
you said if it's extraterrestrials creating that, but I don't automatically subscribe to that either. The extraterrestrial connection comes from a newspaper report in the 1960s, where you were having some circles. In fact, you had it was like 3 circles together in a field, and some reporter said, "Oh, maybe it's the landing. You know, maybe it's where the alien spacecraft landed," because it was in Warminster, where you do get a lot of UFO sightings. Not far from Wiltshire, as it happens, but yeah. Sorry, in Wiltshire, but a specific part of Wiltshire. Yeah, so you know, that was someone's space, and ever since then, people have associated crop circles and UFOs.
Okay, so if it's not UFOs, then it's not humans going out and doing it. What's causing them?
No idea.
And if it was UFOs, has anyone speculated what that might be? I mean, it's not going to be the mark that's just left where a UFO lands, is it?
No. I mean, the crop circles we get these days are far more complicated, and it's speculated very widely, and I'm actually quite slowly, but I am starting to come round to this way of thinking that it is a form of communication from an intelligence.
A marker.
Well, mathematically, so in this year's, in last year's, in 2020's crop circles, they were mostly quite similar patterns to what we've seen over the last maybe decade now. A couple of variations, but mostly it's been the same style of crop circles. Circular patterns with some straight edges, but all geometric based crop circles. Mathematically, I mean, the far better minds than mine analyse the crap out of these things, but mathematically, the number 8 as a grouping of 3, so 3 8s, keeps coming up time and time again in different crop circles. So that suggests some sort of communication. The one I mentioned
or what we see as 3 8s could be just 6 circles in a certain configuration.
Well, to give you an example, the one I mentioned in Bavaria. And this is the kind of analysis I'm talking about. This does have... It's a series of concentric circles with some angular components to it. And, if you like, dots in between each angular component. There are 8 dots. There are 8 angular components. There are 4 concentric circles inside the entirety of it. People have looked at the distances of these concentric circles. They've looked at the spacings of these dots and the geometric patterns. And they've said that it matches almost perfectly the epicycle of Mercury, including a backwards or retrograde period of 22 to 24 days included near the end of each cycle. It just so happened that Mercury was in retrograde 4 days before this crop circle was discovered. And they've worked out that the way this, if it does link to the way that Mercury orbits itself, then the entire crop circle would show as 8 lots of 116 days or 2.5 years. So I've looked at this picture and worked out, actually that equates, like, based on how long a day is in Mercury, which is, it relates to this, that and the other. That's 2.5 years.
How long is it? How long is it?
Saying.
And how long is a year on Mercury?
I
Must be a lot shorter than one of our years.
I mean, this is not me doing this calculation.
But I mean, the nearer the sun, the shorter your year, isn't it?
Indeed. But yes, there was another circle that appeared in Wiltshire on the same day, that also had the pattern of 8 in it very regularly showing, although in a different way. It still has the 4 concentric circles though. It is interesting. There was another one as well on the same day that had the pattern of 8 regularly repeated as well. That one, 4 concentric circles. But they're happening on different countries on the same day, and they've got this seeming connection. Now, I do wonder if this is a little bit of people finding connections where actually none exist, which I think, if you go far enough into mathematics, you can do.
Well, if you get into numerology, you start seeing a significance in a number. You suddenly realise the number 23, I think that was in the movie, wasn't it, the Jim Carrey movie? Suddenly the number 23, you realise there were 23 steps in his house, and there were 23...
Yes,
whatever,
exactly.
Suddenly everything is about 23. And it all becomes very significant, and it's all part of a plot. And something happened to him on the 23rd of the month, and it's
That's so I do wonder about that.
But that's part of the reason why we learn best from stories, because we like to make connections between things. You just give us isolated facts; they don't take. But you tell us a story, and that will take, and the contents are quite complicated contents of a story can be retained, where an individual fact can't.
Yes.
I mean, is Stonehenge a similar kind of thing? It's just a crop circle made of stone.
Well, nobody knows why why Stonehenge is actually there. They speculated. The crap out of it. I get very... Do you know what? Right, I'm going to go on a little bit of a mini rant here because we're starting to run out of time. But I get very angry when people talk about druids as if they know what it actually was. Literally, the word druid comes from one Roman document where they talked about someone having a druidic position in a village. but there's absolutely no context as to what that position actually was. It could have meant village idiot, the way this thing reads, or it could have meant village leader, and anything in between. The only thing you can... They're very scathing about this druid. But that's it. That's where the entirety... Anything else where anybody claims to be a druid, or, you know, it's druidic symbols, it is made up bollocks. There you go.
Come
like, at me, druids.
Druid sounds like another word for wizard or something. Or, you know,
It's.
I'm sure I saw something in a history book once about a Roman campaign where they marched on Wales against the Druids. But
Okay, I don't.
I assume they were a tribe or something.
That could have been a modern interpretation.
Could be.
Because
I think
the
it was
word druid has
London
come into
Dungeon,
use. But it has no real historical.
Oh.
People have meant it to be, you know, wise man of the village. Yeah, no. We don't know what it meant. But there we go. Okay, so a little bit of a different kind of episode this time. It's not been so much of a debate, although it did turn into one. I like to be questioned.
I rattled your cage.
No, I mean, it's there to be rattled. But do you know, I'm going to come back to one thing you did actually query me up. Like, you know, if it's not people and it's not extraterrestrials, who is it? And I was just I don't know. But here's the thing. I think it is very important to keep an open mind. I do believe that they are created by some form of an intelligence. Now, whether that intelligence is extraterrestrial or not, I couldn't say. UFOs have been associated in areas where you see lots of crop circles. There's no denying that. But as has ball lightning, it's been claimed that they've been caused by weather conditions. I mean, that's utter nonsense, but, you know... but I am absolutely convinced that it is an intelligence of some description. Now, I personally don't believe in any gods or any sort of afterlife or anything like that. I do believe in energies around the universe. So I suppose you would have to say, you know, well, what's to say we are the only intelligence on this planet? What's to say, you know, the Gaia theory implies that actually nature itself is an intelligence and a consciousness. I wouldn't like to speculate that was not the case. So, yeah, I keep as open-minded as possible about crop circles, except that they are all made by people. That is nonsense.
We shouldn't disparage people who have lots of questions. We should disparage people who have all the answers. And I think it is nice to have something that's, you know, it's very pretty to look at. Farmers probably don't appreciate it, but they don't appreciate most things. You know, they're there to make food.
It does make farmers.
It's just the cost of it.
On this, I really feel for farmers because they don't ask for this. It's not, and it does make their jobs much more difficult in their lives of misery. So, So listeners, if you come across a crop circle, ask the farmer before going in the field. Don't just wander in. Don't go damaging the crops. Don't be a dick. Most farmers are really nice when you actually talk to them. Yeah. If you want to find out more,
much rather you talk to them about it.
Do you know what? Most of them, if you talk to them, they're fine.
Talk about it, then yell at you for being in the middle of their crop.
Yes, absolutely. But if you want to see the images of the crop circles that were discovered in 2020, listeners, go to cropcircleconnector.com. And they have all the images there. They're well worth supporting as a site. I've been following them for decades now, and they do a lot of good work. And you can see some fantastic deep dives into each of the crop circles and people's speculations as to their meanings and intents and details on each one. So there you go. Let's do an end of End of episode summary like we normally do, Neil. Crop circles then. What do you reckon? You ask me the question, what causes them? I'll ask you, what causes them then?
I don't know. If they're to do with extraterrestrials, I cannot think what purpose they possibly serve. They're very, very pretty. They're very pleasing to most human eyes. And all you can do is wonder about them. Just wonder how they're created. Yes, some are evidently created by people, but a lot of them evidently aren't. So we just don't know. I really wouldn't. Maybe one day we'll find out, but at the moment, I wouldn't like to say what I think they are because I really don't know. And even if it was humans, what gave them the idea to do it?
Yeah.
To make a design like that.
A very good point. And what do you think, listeners? What do you think causes crop circles? Do let us know by the usual means. If you have visited a crop circle, we want to hear your experiences. And all, to do with any UFOs or aliens, we want to hear what you think. Do contact us by the usual means, Facebook and Twitter, by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us at aliensexplored.com. And don't forget to leave us a quick review wherever you listen to your podcast, because it really, really does help us, and it helps other listeners to find the podcast as well when you do that. So please do, and it is much, much appreciated. And if crop circles are of particular interest to you, then keep listening to the show, because we're going to be having some very, very exciting news coming up in the following months. We have a little side project we've been working on behind the scenes, haven't we, Neil?
We've been mulling it over, yeah.
We have. It is very, very early stages yet, but we will be giving you more details as time goes by. And another good reason to keep listening is next week we're going into a fascinating topic. We're going back 20 years over to New Jersey.
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Oh dear. As an actor, I need to work on my American accent. And it's
the New Jersey is a very specific one, isn't it? Very, very Sopranos.
It is.
When they dump bodies out by the New Jersey Turnpike.
Well, it is a New Jersey Turnpike UFO of 2001 that we are discussing. So maybe it was a body being dumped out of a black sedan. Let's find out next week. One to look forward to. In the meantime, do keep watching those fields of crops and the skies. Take care for now.
Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Aliens Explored is a Fiegel Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit aliensexplored.com.